Good evening. Welcome to the Museum at FIT Fashion Culture Program Series. My name is Tania Melendez Escalante, and I am Senior Curator of Education and Public Programs at the museum. Tonight, we're honored to welcome fashion business owners, Mariam Conde of Femme Progressive, Princess Jenkins, owner of the Brownstone, Atim Annette Oton of Calabar Imports, Katrina Paris-Pin, owner of Nilu Gift Store, Shireen Wood of Harlem Haberdashery, and anthropologist Dr. Mikaila Brown, who is CEO of the Common Thread Project and organizes fashion tours of Harlem. They are going to discuss gentrification, fashion, and the changing landscape of this very iconic neighborhood of New York City, Harlem. At the Museum at FIT, we have a strong commitment to facilitate conversations involving players in our local fashion system. Our partner tonight, Mikaila Brown, shares this commitment with us, and we are immensely grateful for her leadership in this process. Together, last week we held a workshop with our speakers in preparation for tonight's event. And we want to thank the support of Silicon Harlem, who lent us their co-working space for the workshop. We also wish to thank law firm Shepard Mullin and the nonprofit business advisory Start Small, Think Big, because they took the time last week to speak to us about the challenges that small businesses owners face. Tonight, our speakers will share with you their insights that are a result of this workshop. Please join me in welcoming Mariam Conde, Princess Jenkins, Atim Annette Oton, Katrina Paris-Pin, Shireen Wood, and Dr. Mikaila Brown.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I want to start by thanking Tanya for providing us with an opportunity to have this really important conversation tonight. In order to better explain the intentions behind this panel, I'd like to start by telling you a quick story. It's about a man named Ibrahima, who was born in Mali, West Africa, but spent his years between Dakar and Milan because his father was a diplomat. Growing up in Milan inspired with him a deep love for fashion. When he moved to Harlem 20 years ago with his wife Fatima, he knew that moving to the fashion capital of the world was a sign that now was his time. For 10 years, he and Fatima sold t-shirts out of the trunk of their car. It didn't matter the day, the hour, or the weather. It didn't matter that he had to sporadically work admin jobs to feed his family, that Fatima had to fly back and forth between America. Oh, is there something wrong? Sorry, okay. Can everyone hear me? I'm usually loud, so that's why I lean back a little bit. Let me know if I get too loud, okay? Okay, Fatima had to fly between here and Africa to work consulting jobs. Even in the face of the security that these jobs provided, he and Fatima persisted. 10 years ago, they rented their first boutique, Baby Noir, and featured their own line, as well as many New York-based African and diasporic designers. I was one of those. They made me feel like a success, and they were a success. So much so that 2 years ago, they moved to a bigger space. Ibrahima designed the space himself. It was incredibly chic with white and gold dome chandeliers. A falling out with his landlord over rising rents forced him to move to a location on 125th and 5th. 6 months after moving in, Shea Shack moved in across the street. 1 month later, his landlord gave him the option of a buyout or a hugely exorbitant rent. The point of this story and this panel is to put a real face on gentrification. It's easy to be indifferent when it's not your neighborhood or your business that's impacted. For many, gentrification is a silent boogeyman that you know exists but can avoid as long as it's not on your block. But gentrification is a very real thing, and it was real not only for Ibrahima, but for the 4 other Harlem boutiques that I lost this year from my tour route due to unrealistic commercial rental hypes. How many of you in this room are entrepreneurs? Can you raise your hand? Okay. If you are, you know about the sleepless nights, the relentless pursuit of your passion, the missed family celebrations. When gentrification affects minority communities, the entrepreneurs, especially the fashion entrepreneurs that operate there, are often impacted permanently. I saw Ibrahim in a coffee shop last week. He and his family are planning to move back to Africa. They have decided to never open a boutique again. This also means that it will be harder for local designers that they used to feature to find a supportive consignment relationship for their unique products. Local artisans are not the only ones affected. The fashion industry suffers as well. A lack of diversity can be considered the biggest Achilles heel to the fashion industry today. Minority designers often don't have the educational or financial background to be taken seriously by multinational, larger, or luxury brands. But we know they have the creativity. We know that because while larger brands often don't give these small minority designers a chance, they aren't above being inspired by their creativity for their own designs. Where minority culture and creativity does get legitimated is in their local neighborhoods with their regular customers. To lose this audience, this support, this base, means a loss of a safe space for creative expression that represents a community often begging to be seen, heard, and understood. I would like at this time to present to you 5 Harlem-based boutique owners who are continuing Harlem's legacy as a hub for fashion innovation and cultural expression. In a world where it seems like everyone is wearing Zara, the products that these boutiques offer help keep fashion in New York from becoming too cookie cutter or culturally devoid. I hope you enjoy our panel this evening. I'd like to begin by presenting, can you hear me? All right. I'd like to begin by presenting Princess Jenkins. Princess is an award-winning retailer and the creative visionary behind the Brownstone Lifestyle Boutique in Harlem. She dresses celebrities and makes every woman who shops in the Brownstone feel like a celebrity. Next, we have Shay Wood, who is the president and CEO of several fashion and lifestyle companies, 5001 Flavors, Harlem Haberdashery, and HH Bespoke Liquors. She is also a fashion and lifestyle expert with 20 years of experience. Next, we have Atim Annette Otun, who is a co-owner, sorry, just kidding, we're out of order. Okay, next we have Katrina Paris-Pinn, who is the president and CEO of Nilu. Nilu is a home, lifestyle, and gift store that features makers from Harlem and beyond. They believe when you support a maker, you support a community. All right, next we have Atim Annette Otun, who is a co-owner of Calibor Imports, a 15-year-old retail business focused on African, Asian, and South American fashion, jewelry, home, and gift items with stores in Harlem and Brooklyn. And last but not least, we have Miriam Conde, who is the owner of Femme Progressive, a line of innovative and customizable fashion made for the modern woman to celebrate her confidence and effortless excellence. Femme Progressive creates for all sizes, and their stores welcome other great creators to rent their space. All right, so my first question. Gentrification is defined in many ways, but the most common definition is a shift in a neighborhood from predominantly renters to buyers. The purpose of this panel is to put a real face on gentrification. That being said, how would you define gentrification as it applies to your personal experience?
I guess. I don't have a sound.
Oh, there we go. I think it's working. It's working.
Okay. Well, I have three locations, Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights, and Harlem. All three I went to when I understood that there was going to be a shift in community, and it's racial, it is economical, it's also political, okay? So what does that mean? In Harlem, racial means that historically, I would say for the last 60 to 100 years, it's been primarily African American. Around the late 70s, an African population arrived. So now you get little Senegal in the middle of that. East Harlem is primarily Latino, Puerto Rican based. So that's the racial dynamic. Somewhere around the late 90s, early 2000, when Manhattan was getting expensive, they began a shift from what we'll classify as downtown, midtown, west side, uptown. You know, at one point, nobody crossed 116th Street, 110th Street. All of a sudden, we started to see changes in the neighborhood. In some ways, there's an advantage and there's a disadvantage. What does that mean? It means that prices go up in everything, generally.
Is this working?
Yeah, that's working.
Okay, so for me, there definitely in Harlem is New Harlem and Old Harlem. And it's really interesting for me because I kind of live in both Harlems. I'm from Harlem, native New Yorker, born in the 70s, went through the mini renaissances of Harlem. So right now, as an adult, it's very different for me than as a child. But I have family that are essentially will be priced out of Harlem soon. And so you do have to add the racial component when we just talk about it's not just renters and buyers, it's a whole cultural shift. Different bars, different entertainment sources, different types of stores to shop at. And so I really feel like every time I look, there's a little bit of Harlem that's less Harlem than what it was when I grew up. There's also the vision of entertainment, the vision of culinary venues. Some of my family members probably will never go to Red Rooster, and I love Red Rooster, and I have a great relationship with Marcus and the community, a lot of businesses, but there's a lot of division, I think, that gentrification brings, and there's, I just wish that everyone could benefit equally. It was a mutually beneficial, but sometimes I think gentrification, unfortunately, is not mutually beneficial.
So all of your products are very cultural, very ethnic, originating mainly African American culture. With this changing landscape, how do you think, A, you'll survive, and B, what do you mean toward the maintenance of the cultural heritage of Harlem?
I think I can take that one. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. I want to say that the Brownstone has been in Harlem for the past 20 years, and I've been a resident for maybe 30 plus years. I have definitely seen Harlem shift and change, and as a business owner, that means a couple of things. There is to your point, a new Harlem, but there is that legacy of fashion and culture, and everything that we sell in the store is inspired by that. It is reminiscent of what fashion looked like in Harlem yesterday, as well as being very contemporary and offering some styles for today. I think I saw the shift in Harlem when Bill Clinton came. And people really don't talk about that, but he opened an office on 125th Street, and immediately the rents started to skyrocket. Just out of control rents everywhere. Prior to that, you could find a great little space. May not have been in the best shape, but you could fix that up. There were a lot of community businesses. People could afford to be there. And that, to me, was the first shift that I saw. And as we move forward and the gentrification takes hold, I think that every community has to change. We know that things can't stay the same, or we would still have horse-drawn carriages. So we know that things must progress. The thing is, as business owners, we want to be a part of that wave, and we want to benefit from that wave. And what we've seen is that we've lost businesses in the wave. So we're lucky enough to actually be riding the wave, and we need continuous support from everybody, local businesses, politicians, residents, to help keep us alive.
Katrina, you're a good example of someone who's pivoted your business model. It was inspired by your family, but now that the community is changing, can you speak to how that informs the products that you offer?
So Nailu has been, similar to Princess, we've been entrepreneurs, business owners in Harlem for 20 years, starting with a floral business for 15, and then in 2015, opening up Nailu. Nailu started from, first of all, we live in the neighborhood, right around the corner from where the store is. So we're vested. We're growing, our children are being raised in Harlem, which Nailu is named after my two sons, Nigel and Luke. It started off with, a similar demographic in that with the floral business, it's gift giving. And so not wanting to give up the opportunity of having really put, sweat equity into, the previous business, we wanted to really be a part of what was happening and changing. So Nailu, what I love about it, it's a platform for makers for Harlem and beyond, because having lived in the neighborhood and been, privy to a lot of the other business owners, there were also a plethora of makers that didn't have a platform, really. So that was one of the things that was really important for us to integrate into our business model. So NILU starts first and foremost as a platform for Harlem makers, and then it stretches beyond that, because, as you said in the introduction, if you support a maker, you support a community. And one of the biggest things for us, we want to preserve as much as we can. The responsibility that we feel that we have to Harlem is preserving our culture, our craft, and making available things that the Schaumburg may not have available. There's not a lot of platforms that speak to what Harlem once was. People think about it in one particular context, and so we want to offer not only, the Ode to Harlem Renaissance era, but there was, Harlem's been an influence across the world, from the 70s to, Man-Child in the Promised Land, the 70s to the 80s with hip-hops, and it continues. I mean, one of the things about gentrification that I've experienced, it's been bittersweet, because my customer base is not only, the individual who's been in the neighborhood and has been born and raised, but it's also, part of the tours that are walking the streets of Lenox Avenue. I mean, they just can't get enough. So we feel it's our responsibility to show the narrative of what, Harlem was, what it is, and what it will continue to be.
I love that. Can I?
Yo, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm actually, my name is Mariam Conde, and I'm the designer for Femme Progressive. And Femme Progressive is basically, in the name itself, it has progress, and it's really because I believe in progression, I believe in evolution and making things better. So in gentrification, I try to be an optimist about it, because I want to take the progressive side of it. But I would love my customers, and I try to make that, communicate that when they come in the store, is to really embrace that same philosophy, and for us to kind of work together. Because, again, like prior to this meeting, prior to this event, we had a conversation before, and I was mentioning that we all are going through changes. The reason why people are moving from downtown to Harlem is because they're going through some changes as well. So for the store, I just try to make it so that we all have that same mindset of progress, and we kind of just work together in that positive direction to make the culture better, but also to really find a way to preserve the culture and still embrace new things, and make it so that everyone is comfortable, everyone is happy, and people that have businesses and that have had businesses in Harlem for so many years can still stay there and still share their visions. We're pretty new, we're about 2 years old, so I don't know much about the history, but I did get very much inspired by Harlem from Africa, because I was born and raised in Africa, so I do have a lot of inspiration from the Renaissance years. There's a reason why we chose to be in Harlem, because of that essence of the culture of our people, and the richness. We have so much wealth in just the culture itself, and it's a great thing to celebrate that in a very progressive way, and to show people that essence in a very positive light. So that's what we try to do, and I would love for the customers and the people and you here to really embrace that and to work with us, because we're all going through it pretty much in our own ways.
So I guess my question is, fashion is moving very much online, especially probably there's some students in the audience, they're probably choosing online over brick and mortar because of the budget. What keeps you guys staying on the streets rather than moving online? It'd be less overhead, it'd be easier. Why is it so important for you to have a space in Harlem?
Well, I guess I can even go back to the other question and go into that. So for Harlem Haberdashery, online presence was not as important as a brick and mortar. Our business primarily started as a custom clothing company with our parent company, 5001 Flavors, 27 years ago. We cater more to athletes, personalities in the entertainment industry. Our store really was for people who are not celebrities but have their own red carpet moments. So we wanted to cater to more people who are not celebrities. But Harlem for us was where we had to be. our store and our brand is a love note to Harlem. We celebrate and pay homage to the legacy of Harlem, to the fashion traditions, to the family structure in Harlem. And we absolutely know that the brand aesthetic of our store is, like I said, a love letter to Harlem. If you come into our store, you come into our family. You come into our brand, you come into our family. Our store it looks like a brownstone boutique, but it looks like a library. And we understand that the brand aesthetic must be experienced. So for us, online is a different customer. You can buy online, but we really want you to come in and experience the love that we have for each other as a family and also the brand in Harlem. So online is a definite profit center, but it's not something that I felt that we can base our business on. Having, been a service provider to a lot of different artists and entertainers, we really felt like a brick and mortar was something that we needed to have. The overhead is something, unfortunately, that comes with the territory, but we wanted to and will continue to build out our brand as a lifestyle brand. And so our goal really is to go international with mass marketing, and you have to create a brand aesthetic. So that's why for us, brick and mortar was a must.
I think the change to online for any small business, when I began the business, we were already online. We've gone through several different phases. We were online. We were also doing wholesale online. We retreated. And then what we've primarily done, which I think is very clear for any small boutique, is spend a lot of time on marketing, but strategic marketing through Instagram, Facebook, on Twitter, even LinkedIn. Some of that is about understanding that the customer is buying at Amazon, one, distinctively. Buying at Amazon distinctively, but that customer is not really mine. When people say, "Oh my God, you should be online and you should be online," I'm like, yes, but I'm looking for a very particular type of customer. I'm looking for a customer that wants to be unique. Okay, so that the jewelry is unique, the clothing is unique. That customer is not necessarily looking to buy what I sell on Amazon. So the investment we made almost maybe 12 years ago was when Google was beginning to do a lot of marketing directly or assisting small businesses. We were probably one of the first small businesses that sold African jewelry and fashion, and we got a lot of push with Google at that time. So sometimes when people search for things, we are probably on the first page. A, by longevity. B, by being sort of really, I think I remember Google was just offering a lot of free things in the beginning. Similarly to, we switched over to Square. Square is doing similarly with us. Join us. We'll help market and promote some of your things. We'll help increase traffic in a variety of ways. Some of that has to do with how, as a small business, you have to remember that you're actually a very powerful thing to large corporations. They want you. I mean, Amazon calls me. I have refused to create an Amazon account. Okay, and that's intentional because I want to be independent, but I also want a different corporation who has a different ethical value, because my products are handmade. There's an ethical value that I have with it. Anybody who goes into Amazon gets copied in a variety of ways. So, I have some ethical views about where I place myself as a small business. In terms of Instagram, we've had conversations with Instagram about where we want to position ourselves. A lot of it has to do with understanding the value of your company, the value of your product, and also taking risk. I mean, today I spent a day emailing a whole group of Jersey developers. My customer base is moving to Jersey. I kind of know that. So part of it, the conversation is, well, what if we do things in Jersey in a variety of different ways? And how do we move and how do we position? A lot of it has to do with a lot of, when I talk to young people about going online is not necessarily a value. It's a different strategy. Okay, if you talk to friends of mine who are doing online for Macy's or for Target, they'll tell you they're losing money online. So, you know, you have to have a marketing machine behind the online. And you really have to have a 50% off strategy. It's not a strategy where you're going to win 100%. So if you have things you want to get rid of, online might be the place for it.
I'm going to ask a potentially controversial question. All right, most of your products are very ethnic, very African-inspired. We now know, because of cultural appropriation, those people who are outside of the community are very thoughtful about wearing things that belong to our community. How do you navigate that with the changing demographic of customers in Harlem who might be afraid to buy a dashiki because they don't want to be offensive to somebody else on 125th, which is a legit concern? So,
I mean, I'm probably the best place for it. Sorry, I'm probably the best place for it. I am an African who has an American mother, okay? So my American mother left Harlem and married an African, and therefore she wore dashikis, okay? So I've grown up with the idea that there are certain clothing types you can wear if you are not African. Some of it has to do with how you wear it. In other words, most African women will wear top and bottom, right? A skirt and a top. As a European person, I tell you, just wear one. Don't wear both. Make a different statement. It's a different ode to culture. You're not necessarily appropriating. You are appreciating it. You're honoring it in a different way. I think part of the challenge is what I find more offensive is that China is making copies of my stuff, okay, and trying to sell it back to me. That to me is money, okay? If somebody who's European is wearing something, I'm less offended. I'm more offended by the fact that a friend of mine had to take her website down because every single item was copied by China. That to me is more offensive because it's profit loss and somebody's creativity and somebody's hard-earned time. Similarly, when I walk around, different fairs, I watch people photograph things, and then somebody pops up a website and they're selling the same thing, and I'm like, oh God, I just missed the day when people were very creative.
I like to say that a lot of what we do in the Brownstone is inspired fashion. And it can be inspired by African Americans, Caribbeans, Asians. It's definitely an inspired contemporary feeling. So I think that when people come to the Brownstone, they are looking for something authentic. I don't think we have to water it down. I think that if you get to 125th Street, you want to be a part of that Black experience in some way. You will select the way in which you find it to be comfortable for yourself, but we have a lot of different offerings, so I think that people can find that. And then the other thing that I wanted to share about being a retailer, having graduated from MFIT, studied merchandising, I also teach a class here on how to start and run a successful boutique. I am a retailer at heart, and I think that there will always be a need for retail stores, that people would always want to come in and find someone who knows your name, or remembers that you bought that red dress from me and how was that event that you went to, or remembers that you came in last time and your baby was 2 and now the baby's in school. We get to share those pictures. That's something you cannot get online. And that's the advantage that we have, is connecting to the heart of our customer. Of course, we're there to sell you merchandise. We have to make a living, but you don't have to shop every time you come in. Sometimes you're just checking on me. Hey, Princess, how you doing today? I walk by, I love your window. I have people who have never shopped with me, men especially, because I'm close to the east side, so I get some transient traffic. Hey sis, I always love your window. You're doing your thing, baby. Keep it up. You can't get that anyplace else, right? But that encourages me because the community itself is watching. And then I'll make this last point. A young lady came in who I didn't really recognize, never saw her before. Young woman, like in her 20s. And she was shopping and buying whatever she wanted. And finally I said to her, what do you do? She says, first off, let me thank you, Miss, what's your name? That's what she said. What's your name? I said, Princess. She says, my name is Princess Nokia, who I'd never heard of. I'm a rapper, and I grew up in this community. And when I was a little girl, because I've been there now 20 years, when I was a little girl, I always wanted to shop in this store. And you have no idea what your being here means for me, because this is my passage into adulthood. So I'm not shopping here today just because. I'm making a conscious effort. This is someplace I always wanted to come. I'm so glad you're still here. And in terms of social media, because I looked her up after she left, 100,000 followers, almost 1 million followers. So you just don't know who's going to walk into your door. But I tell you what, I bring my very best every day.
I would like to take a shot at that. Oh, yeah, you go first.
I was going to add that, at our store, it's a variety of not only fashion accessories, but books, candles, cards, a lot of things that focus on Black culture, because it's really important that, that we have that available in our communities, that I should not have to go somewhere else to hear somebody else's narrative about what my history is about. So that's really important at NILU. So for us, we feel like the more kind of risque things that push the envelopes and make people uncomfortable is the conversation that I want to have. It's the narrative that I want to be able to tell the story to, and not have that be somebody else who doesn't live in the neighborhood, who came, Johnny come lately, who came into the neighborhood and is going to tell the stories of what our history is. So I welcome, when people come in and they want to know, about, certain books that talk about, fashion, in our culture, or cinema, or jazz. So I welcome that. And I think that that individual who, first of all, even wants to come uptown to explore that is not, usually the more open-minded person who wants to find out. So I welcome that. And the question you asked earlier about why Harlem, because to that point, I want to have these experiences in our neighborhood. I want to be able to go down the street and find the things that I need to find and not have to get on the train like we had to before. I mean, that's the part of the bittersweet of gentrification, where now we have these amenities in our own neighborhood. And so, I want to be able to go to Harlem, haberdashery down the street, or Princess, and know that I'm, supporting the community in that way, and that we are the placeholders, we are the people sitting at the table holding on to being able to be the narrative for that. So it's important.
I love that. Yeah, I was basically the idea of the store started off as a celebration of women. So I'm seeing it more as a designer. My focus is the woman herself. So that woman is anyone from a Black woman, a Caucasian woman, an Indian woman, anyone. The modern woman is my main focus. And the reason why I try to harmonize everything to express that in the garments is because I cannot define the customer, because every single woman is different. So I allow her to define herself by using the templates that I have and taking that and turning it into what she likes. So we actually customize in the store. Every ideas you see are ideas that you can take and turn them to your own liking. So customers come and they turn it, like she takes a red dress, she wants to change it to white, add a sleeve here and there. We allow every single woman to kind of customize and turn it to their own unique aesthetic. And the reason why I treat the store that way is really because my own background is a mix. My father is Maninka and my mother is Fulani, and I've always been trying to find a way to harmonize everything that I am, because I'm not 100% Fulani, I'm not 100% Maninka. With the store is the same. Femme progressive is a modern woman. She's strong, she's soft, she's loud, but sometimes she wants to be quiet and more gentle. So we have all these sides to us. We're rebels. We're still ladies. We are confident. We're aggressive at work, but we want to be ladies at home. So all of that is we are so many things, and I try to focus on the harmony of everything that we are. I don't focus on race too much. I don't focus on my background too much, but I take from everything and I try to make it so that each design is speaking that, and when you come in, you have the freedom to play with it and do it exactly the way you wish. And I'm very happy when I see people play their own way, because it's so beautiful to see people express themselves.
Speaking of women, right now the face of Harlem fashion is Dapper Dan, and we give him so much respect for staying in the neighborhood. But it's significant that every panelist today is a woman. If you could speak to the role that women have in maintaining that cultural heritage in Harlem through fashion.
Well, I guess I'll start off. So for me, Harlem is about family and community. And there are strong women in Harlem. And I come from a line of strong women. So everything I do is to pay respect, for my family structure and for, why I'm here. My husband was born in 1963. It's in our crest, and we've been serving fashion and love in Harlem since 1963, because Harlem for me is all about being nurtured, it's about being loved, and we try to be a brand that pours that back into the community. So knowing that women change the world, and knowing that, entrepreneurs need to be, respected, but that women entrepreneurs need to be double respected. I think what we need to do is know that women change the world, and women, when you change the life of a woman or entrepreneur, you change generations. So for me, it's about building generational wealth for my family, and that's a main thing in Harlem Haberdashery. My goal as the elder women in my family is to build generational wealth, is to create a transferable business legacy. So that's very important to me. That's done with the respect of what Sylvia Woods did with the Woods family, and that transferable generational brand that she's building over there. That's a real story that I love and respect, and they've been in business for over 50 years, and that's something that growing up I modeled myself after, because that's a great legacy to stand on. I love the Woods because they are still building that legacy. So being a woman is important, but also, being an entrepreneur is just as important for me.
I was raised by a strong black woman, okay? And my mother left this country in 1962 to go to Nigeria, of all places, in 1962. And at some point, my father died, and my mother took over the business, ran the business. So I grew up around a woman who built a business. So she raised me to understand that I had power. And I use that word very strongly. I have power, okay? I also have the ability to build things, to start from scratch, to build it small. I think one of the differences between men and women is that generally men try to build big things. Women are very strategic. I started this business at a street fair. Okay, so we've gone from a street fair to 3 stores. Okay, and the business has changed. And I think there's an intuition that women have. When we sense that there's change happening, we pivot. Okay, I started this business in furniture. I was doing Moroccan furniture. I went from Moroccan furniture to jewelry to clothing. I'm heading out of clothing and heading into African art. Part of it is understanding there's a rhythm that's going on. Almost every 2 to 3 years, there's a shift in the business. And I think that women listen to themselves. I think the only disadvantage, because we don't have the bankable dollars. But generally, we listen to ourselves, we hear it, we feel it. There's a difference, because I have 4 brothers. I understand their rhythm. I watch their rhythm. They walk away from things when it gets difficult. We will stay and toil the earth to solve the problem. And I think that's the difference. There's a reason why, I look at what Dapper Dan, I have absolute respect for what he's doing, but it's a different kind of business that he's running. It's a man's business. And, he's dealing in a man's society when you write about Harlem, you're going to go find a black man to write about. Yet there are 35 to 75% of the businesses that are in the fashion industry in Harlem are women run. You know, we're still dealing in this, when you want to talk about business, you go find a man. You know, yet the irony is that women run most of the businesses. You know, and in the community, women run most of the things around the community. You go to the black church, women are in charge of everything. You go into most of the nonprofits, there might be a figurehead that looks like a man, but the machine that runs it is a woman in Harlem.
I want to ask one last question before I get to your questions. It's about sustainable fashion. So when a lot of people think about sustainable fashion, they think of a Harvard grad who goes to India, finds a maker, she makes beautiful things. But I think of you guys as sustainable fashion in that it's slow fashion, it's customizable fashion. It's not mass runs, it's not cookie cutter, you guys are customized. Is there a merit for you creating black fashion on a small scale as a boutique, not only promoting yourself as sustainable, but projecting yourself, kind of revising this idea of sustainable, because we think about bamboo fabrics and all that stuff are sustainable, but you guys are sustainable brands because you guys are the opposite of fast fashion. Do you think there's merit to that consideration?
Yeah, I think after being at Parsons in product design, there's this whole, you know, I'm going to call it the Western definition of sustainability. There is the African sustainability that has lasted generation after generation. You know, for those of us who grew up, we all remember hand-me-downs, okay? That's sustainable fashion, okay? It's, you know, talking to my, you know, my sister-in-law who is taking my nephew's clothes, and it's now called freshly used. And I'm like, okay, this is the millennial generation with this whatever. In some ways, I think one of the things that whether, you know, if you look at all of us from our different ways, we've looked at fashion in a very different way. I want to make you a dress that in about 15 years, you come back into the store, and I'm like, oh, I remember that one. You know, or for my customers who have bought, you know, products from us. I got a picture and inside the house were a series of products over 15 years. And I was like, ooh, I can't find that anymore. Okay, I need to go into Malawi. I need to go into, you know, it was like reminders of what it is you collect. And I think for a lot of us who are in Harlem and who are black designers and black retailers, we're very selective about what we pick, what we sell, how we sell it. And our customers know that. So the sustainability is that the first customer who came into my store in Brooklyn comes up to the Harlem store and says, oh, you've gotten bigger now. You know, I can't shop here anymore. And I'm looking at her, you better stop. Please shop. Because I won't be here if you don't shop. So I think there's a long process of that process.
Okay. So one of the questions that were asked is, do you have any advice for a budding designer or boutique owner?
I can take that one.
Yeah, Princess.
One of the things that I'd like to say is be authentic, right? And this word is just thrown around. But basically, I think you got to know who you are going into retail, because it's so easy for people to tell you what they think you should be. I came to Harlem with a price point that was considered high by standards, right? But I stuck to my guns. I knew that there was a woman who wanted contemporary fashion, and I wanted to be the person who could deliver that. I'd spent time in the garment center, I knew quality products, and I knew that there was a woman who wanted what I had. I just had to find her as she was finding me. So we still carry contemporary. So I say, find something that you're really good at. Don't shift. Stay in your lane. Stick to your price point. Do your best every day. Because I've seen businesses not sustain because they got tacky and lazy. Clean up. Dust those shelves. Open that door on time. Give people your very best attitude, whether they're shopping or not. Keep your merchandise looking super duper fresh. I take one dress from this rack today and I move it to that rack tomorrow and it looks brand new. But you have to have that heart already. That's not something that somebody can teach you. When it gets tough, to your point, dig in, dig in, dig in, get more creative when it's hard. Right now it's hard in business. I don't think it's super easy. I'm more creative than ever.
Yeah.
Because when you walk through those doors, I got to make you say wow to something, whatever that something is. So, and for a young designer, I would say design, because a lot of people copy. And if you're a designer, you should be able to wake up every day with a new design. Now, if you're a stylist or a copier or somebody who's doing that, well, you'll get whatever the market is giving you and you'll try to make that happen. But if you're a designer, design.
And especially for me, I feel like we are on the perimeter of fashion and entertainment. But the fashion industry has very different cycles than I pay attention to. So you have to really decide, are you in the business of fashion? Is that international fashion? Is that downtown fashion? Or are you doing things that you know and love? And I think that we cater to customers and we help them build their brands and their looks. And so we're kind of outside of the fashion circle. We don't pay attention to trends and forecasts. We make our own forecasts because our customer knows what he wants. Our customer sees the garment and said, that's it. Our customer is confident. And so you have to decide what type of fashion designer. Are you in the cycle or are you out of the cycle? Are you making things that you love or making things you hope other people would love? So you really just have to kind of determine what type of fashion designer you'll be. You also have to be very innovative. So that means you have to be flexible. So if you start at one thing and that's not working, then guess what? You do something else. And so I think a lot of the retailers that you love to go to on your wonderful tours don't exist because they were so stuck on the model that they had that they weren't able to switch, pivot, and change. And I think you have to do many things now. You have to have, as I say, many different hustles. You have to have you have to have a lot of different hooks out there and see which one, makes money. But I think you also have to be true to an entrepreneurial spirit and not just a roadmap that somebody else created and make it your own. You have to be a little bit more authentic with yourself.
I'd just like to add, no matter what kind of boutique you're doing or whatever business that you're going to start, you have to know the business of fashion, the business of whatever the industry is that you're pursuing. If you don't, it doesn't matter what you're designing, it doesn't matter what you're doing, because you're not going to have that longevity. You really have to understand the marketplace, where you fit in it, what makes you special. I mean, all of those business 101 cliches are a cliche for a reason, and they're important.
I think that one of the things, after being a chair or an associate chair at a design school, one of the things I always tell young designers, go work for somebody and make a mess there, okay? And really go work for somebody. Really go work for, if you want to be, let's use terrible, this glorious fashion designer. Go work for that fashion designer. And make mistakes. It's expensive on their account. It's not on your paycheck, but really do it. Learn the business. If you want to be a business that's international, work for someone who's working internationally. See what it is, what it really means to be international. If you want to work in a business that really is about a store, go work for a store. And if you're interested in, if it's not Target, if you want to be a small boutique, find a small boutique. Work for that small boutique. Understand the rhythm of what it is you're in, and go get some real good, solid business classes. And when I say business classes, not I want to open up my business, but understand things like, what's my markup? Take a retail business class. That's very different from any other class you would ever take. And spend some time, really, I think one of the things I will say for young people, just because you have a website and Instagram, that's not a business model, okay? Understand that that's just one slice of a business. As a business runs 365 days a year. And kind of, if you're doing marketing is a 12-month thing, but it's really averagely maybe about 35 days of the year. There are days when business is very interesting and days when this business is very boring. What do you do on a day when you're like, because you all go through it, you're sitting around and you're like, oh my God, what do I do now? Most of us who are in business, we never get those boring days. Because what happens? It's quiet, you run back and go and do 2,500 things. and make yourself happy. That's one of the things I tell a lot of young people. And stop watching what the Joneses are doing. Because the Joneses are not that interesting. You are the most interesting thing, and your gut tells you that you're interesting. You dress differently, you walk differently, you pay attention to things differently. In the end, I would tell you, be different. Because right now, I don't go into any of the retail stores across this country, because they all look the same. You know, I can go into Atlanta, oh, okay. I walk by the windows, okie dokie, nothing interesting. I really like, the word will be, I go looking for things that are interesting. And I have to go off the beaten path. And that's where I'm hoping to find someone like you.
I would just say, like, of course, what everybody would say is love. Really make sure it's love, because it gets to a point where it gets so hard that if you don't love it and you won't fight for it, there's many times you can easily just give up. So really make sure this is something you love, you fight for, you do as much as you can before you let it drop, So that I would say that's my number one. And then the other part I would say is just try to minimize losses. Like, try to minimize losses as much as you can prior to even doing it. Calculate, figure out how to minimize loss, because the best way to really, with loss, you're just, when you're just adding things and they're sitting there, they're sitting on the shelves, they're not selling, you're just gonna keep inventories, and it's not gonna just keep going. So I think minimizing loss and having a strategy set up to really minimize loss is the best. Study the market, like they said, study the online as well as the brick and mortar market, and really find a way to make everything work. Study them before you jump in them and make it work in your favor. So not to lose your aesthetic, not to lose your focus, to not lose your aesthetic. But even if you look online and you try the online market, try to do it in a way that is so that it doesn't get lost in the mix of everything else that's going on. Because we have to, whether we like it or not, we have to adapt to the changes. We have to adapt to the online. We have to find a way to use online. But you have to study it prior and really understand how it could work for you and see how to jump in it, so that when you jump in, you're not just making a huge mistake. So that's something you can just prevent, as much as possible, try to minimize your losses.
So unfortunately, because the conversation was so exciting, we have to wrap up. I'm going to end with a shameless plug of my work and their work. One of the questions was, how can one learn more about Black fashion culture? So that's what my company does. I give cultural shopping tours in Harlem, and I give you history while we're shopping. So I make learning fun, and you can leave with a cute outfit. But for those of you who have questions that you didn't get answered, right now we have a marketplace. We know some of you don't always go uptown, so we brought uptown down to you. So if you go around the corner, you will find 3 vendors, 3 of these beautiful women selling their products, so you can get an idea, a taste of what Harlem fashion is. But if you want more, please come and approach me. I'll be more than happy to share with you what else is on the landscape. But thank you so much for coming. Thank you for participating in this conversation. We hope that you learned about Harlem.